Welcome to Xanadu Gallery's RedDot podcast. I'm Jason Horsch, owner of Xanadu Gallery, publisher of RedDot blog, and your host for this podcast. This is episode 18, and today, rules, regulations, policies, and procedures in the art business. A couple of days ago, I shared a post on RedDot blog with the question of should photography be allowed in galleries and at shows and in your studio? Should clients or viewers be allowed to take out their smartphone and snap a photograph of artwork in the gallery? And there was a great discussion that got started on that. My position was that no, it doesn't make sense to try and regulate and stop people from taking photographs. I argue that in this day and age of social media and smartphones, you are fighting a losing battle to try and prevent that. And I think you are being counterproductive in terms of your efforts to stop something that could potentially be a benefit to you. I think that there are I know I've had many clients who have emailed us with a photo that they've taken on their smartphone, asking us, is this piece still available? Or they've shared it on social media and we've made a sale from that share through social media. And so I feel like the benefits of allowing photography in the gallery far outweigh the potential downside. Now, that's not to say, and some of you made some very cogent arguments for preventing photography, and some of you have had some very negative experiences with imagery being repurposed and reused in ways that you wouldn't approve of, and in ways that violate your copyright for the artwork. And I do understand that, and I don't want to downplay it. In my mind, it's a question of, there's kind of a cost-benefit analysis that has to be done. And in my experience in the gallery, the benefit of allowing photography outweighs the potential cost. And again, that's not to say that there isn't any potential cost there and that there can't, that you might run into some issues. But in the long run, I feel like it's a positive. And I don't mean to rehash that whole conversation here, and I don't want to focus on just that issue. Instead, I want to take a look at a broader question. And that is the idea of how you can approach your relationships with your customers in terms of setting rules and regulations and as I say, policies, procedures, and that kind of thing in working with your clients and what the benefits and downside are to having some rules and regulations and how to approach this question. And, understandably, many of us would like to, better understand how the business works. We want to understand, what are the rules of the road. And I get a lot of questions about this, both from artists, and I get questions from clients as I'm discussing the business. And certainly there's a lot to think about in terms of how you approach setting up a business. And this is an issue for gallery owners thinking how they're going to interact with their customers. It can be an issue for artists who are participating in shows and festivals. Wouldn't it be nice if every sale was just super simple and a client comes in, sees something that I pulls out a credit card, buys it at full price, pays the tax, pays the shipping, and you're done, and that's the end of it, and you never have to think about anything really. Just works like clockwork. Well, again, in my experience, that's that certainly can happen, but it would be a little bit naive of us to think that every transaction is going to occur in that way. There are a myriad of possibilities each time you begin to interact with a customer, and we need to broadly be prepared to think about how we're going to respond in different scenarios and situations. And so some of the questions that I hear from artists are, okay, how much do you tell clients you're going to charge them for shipping? How do you figure all that out? What's the gallery's policy for sending art out on approval to a client's home or shipping it to them? What's the maximum discount you'll ever give a client? What is your return policy? What's your policy towards children in the gallery? And on and on. You could go and think of a million different questions. And I completely agree and feel it's important to have thought through these scenarios because you don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every time someone walks through the door. You want to set up some guidelines that will help you make decisions and help you set some boundaries in terms of your expectations of your clients, your expectations of gallery sales staff, of how you're going to work with your artists. It makes sense to as much as possible have thought through those things. But I resist, to a certain extent, this idea of setting rules, rules in quotation marks, hard and fast regulations that I'm going to follow in every scenario, that my sales staff is bound to stick to, that there's no flexibility to bend these rules, that we're going to be draconian in how we work with our customers. And the problem that I see with these rules is that they can prevent you from finding solutions to challenges that you might be having in a particular instance with a client. And even more than that, I think they can also cause us to focus on the wrong things as we're working with our customers. We're more focused on what we don't want people to be doing and stopping people from doing certain things. And, as soon as you get into that mindset, you are putting up roadblocks and you're going to be taking a different approach than you would be if you approach this from a different angle. And my rule is pretty simple, and that is I want to help my clients get what they want. And that means that not that there are no boundaries or limits to what we'll do to make a sale happen or to work with a customer and get them what we need. Certainly there are things that just from a pragmatic standpoint, we have to set some limits. But I prefer to think of those limits as guidelines that we generally follow, rather than hard and fast rules. I've worked had an employee years ago who wanted to type up kind of and put it on each and every one of our invoices, and maybe even print up a poster. A set of rules and guidelines about how the gallery operated, and down to every procedure and policy in terms of negotiation and shipping and return policy and all those kinds of things. And this employee made some valid arguments and had some good reasons for wanting to do this. But I didn't do it, and I just felt that there is a better approach and a better way to do it. And when I'm talking to customers and when they're asking questions, I prefer to kind of point to these guidelines with language that sounds accommodating rather than harsh. And so if a client asks, for example, about our return policy, I don't like to say something like, we have a strict 14-day return policy and all artwork must be returned in its original packaging. And, we will then inspect it and go through a 20-point return procedure. And when that's, all of that starts to feel like you are, you're working with some kind of government agency or something, and it just becomes unpleasant. I prefer in those kinds of situations and having those kinds of conversations to use language like, generally we try to, do this or that, or typically our customers will get the piece home and let us know. Or we would ask that for a half down deposit at the beginning of the commission and the balance due when the piece is completed. In other words, I want to soften the language that I'm using and that my staff is using when we're communicating with customers. We want to let them know that they are the number one priority, not the rules. That, if there are reasonable requests that they're making, or if there's something in the way we typically do things that doesn't make sense for them, that we have some room to be flexible. And really, we do. There are just very few problems that can't be solved if we all put our minds to it and work towards resolving those issues together. And that's what I want to have happen as I'm working with my customers. I want us to be on the same team, working together to help them acquire a piece of artwork and to be working together to solve problems. I don't want to be the one who's standing in the way of them acquiring a piece of artwork that's going to bring satisfaction and joy into their lives. And so I'm not going to let some stupid rule get in the way of that. Certainly, as I say, there are going to be times where a client is going to request something unreasonable, or something that's just not going to work in that situation, or they're going to have some unrealistic expectation. But even then, my preference is not to fall back on some, commandment that we have to follow, where I have to say, no, I can't because, our policy doesn't allow us to do that. Instead, I want to work to try and bring that request into line with something that will work for us. And I'm much more likely to be able to do that if I am, again, on the same team and we're working together to solve the challenge. And I find that in most cases, if I have a client who is interested in a piece of artwork and needs some special consideration, be it in terms of negotiation or shipping or having the artwork on approval in their home, generally speaking, between myself, the client, and the artist, we can typically figure something out. And the other important point to make is that there is always going to be some kind of context involved in any scenario that we need to consider as well. So for example, if I just got a new piece in from an artist and this artist's work is in high demand and I know that work is going to sell quickly, my staff and I are going to be less willing and really less able to negotiate much on the pricing of that piece of artwork, because we know that we will be disadvantaging our other clients and our artist if we accept an offer on a piece of artwork that has this high likelihood of a sale and that we know we could probably get full price or very close to full price for that artwork. On the other hand, there may be a piece in the gallery that has been here for quite some time, and maybe the artist has had it in some other venues and it is more motivated to negotiate on that particular piece. Not that we would give it away for free or give a tremendously deep discount. We don't want to certainly devalue the artwork. But again, if you just had some blanket policy in place that, our gallery offers a 10% discount to clients who've purchased before, or, in no circumstances will we go beyond 15% discount, it ignores the case-by-case realities of situations. And you need to have the flexibility to be a little bit more fluid. There are also times where we have customers who have purchased many, many pieces from a particular artist or group of artists in our gallery. And those clients are going to get more consideration when they request us to accommodate something. They want to have the piece on approval a little bit longer, or they want us to arrange for the installation, we will certainly work. We're going to work even harder than we might typically work in order to make that happen. I'm looking for tools that allow me to achieve the best outcome for our clients, for our artists, and for the galleries. And we found that when we're striving to do that, when we're working very hard to achieve satisfaction for everyone involved, that's when we're the most successful. And that's when the sales happen, and you kind of get into a zone and a flow with your customers and with the artwork in the gallery, and you have very positive experiences. I've seen galleries and visited galleries, and I suspect that you have too, where the emphasis is different, where they work towards a more highly regimented, regulated process of interacting with their customers. And I'm not saying that can't work. And I suspect that there are some clients who appreciate that kind of more structured, more rigid relationship, that they feel more comfortable in that kind of environment. That's just not my personality or my approach, and not the way I want my gallery to be perceived. And our clients tell us all the time that they love our gallery, they love our staff. They tell us that we're very welcoming and warm, that we're not intimidating, and they appreciate the personalized customer service that we give, and the way that we do accommodate their special requests, their needs and requirements. And it helps give us a kind of foundation in terms of establishing those relationships, to know that our highest priority is to make everybody happy, and we're going to work within our guidelines as much as we can to make that happen. So going back to this initial question about should clients be allowed or to take photographs of artwork in the gallery, my perspective on this is that if my staff is chasing people around the gallery, telling them to please step back from the art, to please not take photographs, that's going to end up becoming more of their focus, and is going to stand in the way of us accomplishing our goals. Having a sign in the gallery that tells people what they can and can't do does that. I find that it's just very rare that we have circumstances where we have someone in the gallery who's doing something that is undesirable, that could potentially harm the artwork, someone touching the artwork, for example. And even then, we're pretty careful. It depends on what the situation is. I don't want to be chasing people down, yelling at them and that kind of thing. And in most cases, people get it. They're very respectful. And I'll tell you too, that it's quite frequent that people will ask if they're allowed to take photographs in the gallery. It provides us an opportunity, and what we will say is, generally it's fine to take photographs of pieces that you're interested in, but if you'd like, I'd be happy to email you a good photo of that piece along with the information and pricing. And so that really changes the conversation. Most of the time, people will say, "Oh, that'd be great," and then they'll give us the email and the follow up. And and even if they haven't asked and are just snapping some photos, my staff will kind of step in and use that as an opportunity. If you think about it, people pulling out their smartphone to snap a photo of something is a pretty good signal that they're interested in that piece in some way. And so that's a great place to start a conversation, then work towards modifying that interest into passion, and that passion into a purchase. And so that's how we're going to generally approach the business. And again, we have the independence, the ability to be flexible in most cases and meet people's needs, and can often be a process of back and forth with the client and people appreciate that they're receiving personalized attention instead of interacting with a clerk who is just, has a book of regulations that they have to follow, and they're going to get the exact same treatment as every other person who walks through the door. My clients, most of them have achieved some success in their life, and they appreciate being treated in a way that acknowledges their individual importance. And so that's what we're trying to do. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this question of rules and regulations. If you participate in art shows and festivals, do you have a set of rules that you try and follow, that you make your clients aware of? How has that worked for you? If you have a gallery, how strict are you in terms of policies and procedures? Again, how has that worked for you? What arguments would you make against my approach of being a little more flexible and just having guidelines rather than rules, policies, and procedures? Leave your comments on the podcast page. It's on reddotblog.com, and that's all spelled out, reddotblog.com. Go to the podcast section and look for episode 18, Rules, Regulations, Policies, and Procedures in the Art Business, and leave a comment there. Also, if you haven't already, be sure and sign up for our mailing list to receive updates, notifications of new podcasts and new posts on the blog. I'll look forward to hearing from you, and I'll look forward to talking to you in the next podcast. Thanks for joining me.